Most modern homemaking advice says to plan, but the real secret to having a peaceful, productive home, even with small children, is not what you think. I have 5 small children, and our home is more enjoyable now than it has ever been because of what I've learned. Stick around until the end, and you'll discover the 3 keys to building a calm, productive home, even with your precious little ones running around. So let's jump right into the first key, which is all about creating margin in your day. Because if your schedule is packed from sunrise to bedtime, there is simply no room for peace or the flexibility that your little ones are going to need. Part of my problem that I've improved over the years, but I'm most certainly still growing in, is I can tend to try to squeeze way too much into a small amount of time. So, for example, I might try to finish a task before we're going out the door, and rather than leaving wiggle room for me to wrangle up the kids and make sure everybody has their shoes on, they have their drinks, everything that we need, I push the clock way too much. And inevitably, I'm rushing them out the door. I'm getting impatient with them because they're children and they're taking their time because that's what children do. God made them to delight, and they're just not in a rush. We should be more like them, right? So, anyway, rushing and packing things in is the enemy of patience, 100%. We've got to leave time for life to happen. And there are 3 simple things that I really believe will help you do that. To create margin in your days, the first thing that I would say is to create margin in your calendar. Children thrive on structure, and so do we as moms, let's be real. If we're constantly saying yes to play dates or yes to this and yes to that, it can be really easy to overload a schedule. And I know for me, if I've said yes to too many play dates while I also have appointments and people coming over to our home, plus church activities, plus other obligations, the calendar can get so packed to the point where we're not connecting as a family. People are not going to bed at a good time. Our house is in more disarray. It's just not worth it. So I've learned that as I'm looking at the schedule, I really try to minimize how much I'm saying yes to lots of different play dates or outings so that I can say yes to what is best, which is being hospitable to my family, running our home, and training our children in love. I've learned what the limits are for my family because we have 5 children, 9 and under. So that naturally means that if my priorities are the Lord, my husband, my children, there's only so much time in the day. So that just means that for our family, I try to narrow it down to having only so many outings in a week and only so many evenings that have something extra in it. It's going to be very different for every family. But the general principle is to learn to say no to these really great opportunities so that you can be totally present and rested and available for your family. And part of that is minimizing and consolidating outings. And so for me, as part of my weekly systems, I have an errand day. We don't have time, nor do I have any desire to be out running errands multiple days a week. So if I have appointments or if I have to make a Costco trip or something like that, I do my best to consolidate it so that we can just knock it all out one day and then just be home and the rest of the days. The other thing that I would say for creating margin in your day is to be undistracted and be present with your kids. If you're holding onto your phone and constantly available to people outside of your home, that means you are less available to your family. Modern technology has been a blessing in some ways, but it's also been very difficult for moms. When you have text messages and email and Facebook and Instagram and all the other things, if you have all these notifications pulling at you, you only have so much bandwidth. That's just going to lower and lower and lower. And naturally, I don't know about you, but I can get very snappy at my kids if I'm being pulled in a million different directions on a phone and I'm being pulled, rightfully so, in a million different directions in my home. That's just very stressful. So for me, what has been really helpful is putting my phone away, putting it on silent, and only pulling it out at necessary times. I have it on Do Not Disturb most of the days. I have it to where my husband can reach me if he needs to. But a lot of times I do try to put my phone away because it just makes a world of difference in how present I can be with my children. Another thing that I like to do to stay undistracted is to use a notebook for planning my household things. Or if I have a thought, I'll jot it down in my notebook because I don't know about you, but it's so easy to pick up a phone, to write down a task or check my calendar or whatever, and then just get pulled away off into scrolling land and not know how I got there 15 minutes later. So I just kind of nip that in the bud by using pen and paper to write down my to-do list, to write down my shopping list, to write down my daily activities. So that way I'm not tempted to pull up my phone when I'm inevitably thinking about things that I need to do. I just do a lot of my mental processing on paper, and that has been really helpful. Another thing to create margin in your days is to leave a lot of room for life to happen and to plan to do nothing. So, for this first point, I would just say, especially if you have small children, I would leave lots of room to tackle a task. So, if you have to make dinner, if you think you can get it done in 30 minutes, add more time on top of that, because usually someone needs a behind wiped or somebody's throwing a tantrum and you've got to tend to it. And sometimes it goes perfectly and none of those things happen and you can get it done in no time. And then you have a little bit of extra time to tackle something else that you want to. So it never hurts to leave extra cushion time for you to tackle the things that you have to get done. Kind of along the same lines of leaving a lot of buffer space for tasks to happen is you also want to plan time in your day and in your week for nothing. If you don't block out time, you are going to be going and going and not stopping, and you're going to run yourself into the ground. Motherhood is a marathon, it is not a sprint. We have to pace ourselves, we have to nourish ourselves, we have to take care of ourselves. For me, that looks like I have a daily rest time for all of my children where everybody's off either taking a nap or they're doing quiet activities and they don't need mommy for a little bit. So that's really refreshing. It's a helpful reset in the middle of the day. And then we also have a weekly Sabbath where we do not plan anything. It's just a day to have relaxed family time together. But margin alone is not enough because without this next point, your days can feel incredibly chaotic, even if you have all the margin in the world. The second thing that I would say to having a calm and productive home is to build daily and weekly routines to keep your home running. Believe it or not, I'm not a naturally organized person. So when I became a mother, and then I became a mother of 3 in just 15 months when we adopted our 2 girls, I floundered because I didn't have structure. Our home didn't really thrive because I was just kind of reacting to the day all the time. I felt a bit lost and scattered. I was constantly busy, but things were not getting done that needed to get done, and I didn't know how to make it work. But once I figured out how to do it, it made homemaking click for me, and it made a world of difference because I learned the power of creating small daily and weekly habits that just kind of helped build a machine that started to run. And it was wonderful because it would run whether or not I was completely active and in it, or if I was out of commission because I was sick or because I was postpartum or whatever. Now, this is very personalized to the ages of your children and your home life, but the principle of it is applicable to every home. Basically, the concept is you intentionally decide ahead of time what your home and your heart needs, and then you make plans accordingly. The beauty of it is once these habits and routines lock into place and you're kind of doing it without thinking, you're able to get the essentials done and your heart can be free to enjoy your home with all the ins and outs of daily life. In my videos, you'll hear me referring to James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. I really love that book. It's so helpful. He talks about the concept of when you're building the habit, it's challenging. It takes more bandwidth to think through and make sure it's happening. But there's a phase when you are building habits that it goes from your conscious brain to your subconscious, where you're just moving through the activity and getting it done without even really thinking. That's what I mean when I said I built a machine that just kind of ran on its own. I created systems that helped me get the fundamentals of my home done, and I was able to do it without really thinking. Once that clicked, it was revolutionary for our home. I created a video about how to build these systems and routines from the ground up. If you want to know more about that, check out my video. I'll link it down below. And also, if you want some extra guidance on how to get out of overwhelm and start building personalized routines like this, I created a free training that will help you do just that. You can grab that down below. All right, let's move on to this final key because even the best routines and systems can crumble without this crucial piece. Having children is one of the greatest blessings that God can give us. Bringing them into the family also introduces a completely different dynamic in the home that does require a lot of intentionality. Our children come to us as a blank slate, which is both a joy and challenge because they have to be trained, but it can be done and in such a way where they can grow up to be such a delight. Proverbs 22 says that we are to train our children in the way. They don't naturally know. They don't naturally know God's ways of doing things. They don't naturally know your family's ways of doing things or your rhythms in your home. So they have to be taught. According to Proverbs, Deuteronomy, and a lot of other places in Scripture, we are to train character proactively. And part of this is to train them, number one, in obedience. That is absolutely the number one thing that we ought to train them very young, because if they don't know how to obey, they're not going to know how to obey the Lord, first of all, but then second, and very practically, they're not going to know how to follow through with the things that I'm going to talk about here in a moment. So, training your children in obedience is beyond the scope of this video, but I would say that biblically it would be right to train them in first time obedience. That means if you give a command to your child, they ought to learn to respond cheerfully with a good attitude and right away. If you're not quite sure how to do that, I would talk about this with your husband and maybe you guys can figure this out together. Seek some counsel in your local church. But once your children start learning to obey, and as your children are starting to learn to obey, you can teach them how to be involved in some of the rhythms of your home, such as household chores and different household rhythms like morning and evening routine. Part of training in character is to also train them in diligence and stewardship. And this is where chores come in, starting in the toddler years. So, as they're really little, you can invite toddlers to shadow you and help mommy. They love to help, they love to be a part of what you're doing. God designed them to love being with you and to love to learn from you. So, this is a very natural way to begin teaching them the skills. And even though they're not going to be that much of an actual help until a little later, this is still teaching them very good skills and teaching them the beginnings of good work ethic. You could also give little toddlers small supervised jobs like folding rags or pairing socks or putting silverware away. And then I would say also to train your older children in age appropriate chores and create a chore system for them. This teaches them diligence and follow through, teaches them stewardship of the home, a shared family team dynamic of you're working together to get things done. You're simultaneously training your children's character and you're training them in very practical, tangible skills that will both bless them and serve you because eventually you share the load of running a home amongst everybody. And that's how it ought to be. All of the weight ought not to be on mom's shoulders. Everybody can work as a team and take care of the home together. If you want a little bit more details about how to build an age-appropriate chore system, I have a video that I can link down below that I did on that. I think that was literally my first video, so forgive the quality, but feel free to go check that out if you think that that would be a blessing to you. Another thing that's been a real blessing to our home is training my children in having their own morning routine and their own evening routine. They're very simple, but basically teaching children to have structure that they can implement on their own blesses them and it blesses you. Remember, the secret to having a calm and productive home is not about doing more. It's about creating space in your days and your weeks, building intentional structure for your home in a way that will work for your family, and training your children's hearts to love the Lord and to be faithful stewards so your home can thrive with joy and peace no matter how many children you have, even in the busiest seasons. If this video encouraged you, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap the notification bell so that you don't miss my weekly videos. And don't forget to grab my free training below. It's designed to help you get out of overwhelm and start building calm and clarity into your days. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.